think we're okay. Okay. Hey everybody. I'm not sure if this is actually working or not. I really hope it is. I'm sorry I'm a little late, a couple minutes late. And I usually start the streams with a little countdown and some music, and I had like no upload ability. So if it's really bad, let me know in the comments, and we'll either just, I don't know, we'll see what we do about today. But let me know in the chat how it's going, and we'll take it from there. So anyway, we've got a couple people here already. Welcome. It is Wednesday. It's the last day of August. I can't believe it's already the last day of August. That's crazy. And yeah, welcome to Pianist Academy. I'm Charles Szczepanek. And jump in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and if you have any questions today. So, hope to hear from you as we get going today. Last time we had a super exciting, well, it wasn't really a Q&A, but we had a super exciting live stream 2 weeks ago, and I'm hoping to continue that kind of stuff more and more often. We had a couple videos submitted that were masterclasses, and that would be super, super great if we could continue that. I had a ton of fun doing it. I think it was very helpful to a lot of people. So I've actually left a link in the description below if you want to submit something for a future masterclass or a future live session like that. There's a link to send me an email and a little bit of instruction about how to go about doing that. We don't have any today, which is just fine because that means we have more time for regular questions. Super love to continue doing, and if we get enough of those submissions, like in a 2-week period, if we get 3 or 4 of those, I might just dedicate to something like that. That would be really cool if we did maybe one Q&A session a month, and then the other session was just, you know, masterclass type stuff. Hey, Alexander, great to see you. Since you hopped in the chat, can you let me know if things are streaming okay? Or if there's a lot of jittery? Is it jittery? Is it buffering? Does it sound okay? I don't know what's I don't know what's going on with my internet this morning, but it was pretty bad the 10 minutes leading up to when the stream was going to start. So yeah, just let me know. And Alexander, if you've got a question for me, type it in the chat and we can get to it right away because I don't have anything else going on this morning. I have a couple things I can talk about in the meantime. So let's see. I'm gonna just start with a couple not so random thoughts. And hopefully if the stream works and we can continue doing this. I got some comments on a few of the Hand and Faber videos. I wish I could remember. I think it was JG, but I might be wrong. So anyway, let me know in the comments if I messed that up. But I got some comments asking how to apply the Hand and Faber gestures to some repertoire. And I thought, well, today, to kick things off while I wait for some questions to come in, it might be a great opportunity to talk about one of those in particular, and a spot that I'm very familiar with, and I actually have one of my in-person students working on right now, is the second Burgmüller arabesque. Oh, it's bad, Alexander, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. It's probably my fault because on my screen it keeps giving me a spinning circle, and YouTube keeps telling me my connection is not good. Yeah. Well, let me see. Let's see how this goes. I'm going to talk through this piece at the beginning here, and if it's super bad, we'll just we'll call it a day today because it's not worth really talking about anything. And I'll see what I can do about getting that fixed. I don't know if there's anything I can do. It might be the internet company. So, okay. Okay, Alexander. Well, I don't know what that condition is. Hey, Dave. Awesome. Great to see you, Dave. Dave, you can also let me know. I'm getting a spinny screen here. And so if the connection is really bad, we're just going to take things literally a minute at a time and go from there. Hey, Vito. Anyway, well, let me jump in since we have a few questions here. Alexander, expand on, and you're experiencing a lot of pain, and maybe there's something I can do to help you along a bit. Vito, let me practice without hurting. Okay. Alexander, since you were here first. Yeah, Dave, a lot of buffering. I don't know if I don't know if there's anything I can do to fix that today. I tried restarting everything already once. So, okay, let me see if I can answer a few of these questions, and if it's really bad, we're just going to call it a day, and I'll schedule another one of these to happen soon. So, Alexander, hey, Julio. Alexander, practicing without hurting or without more pain. If the pain is, there could be pain in a lot of different places, and the thing that I think about most often when I hear somebody say or talk about pain is probably holding on to too much tension, something like that. So either gripping too much at the keyboard, holding our fingers in place too much, so holding the tendons in place like that. Or, gosh, we could have shoulders raised too high, maybe not as high as I'm showing you right now, but they could be raised in a bad place. We could be sitting too close. There can be a lot of things. The first place I usually look at, though, is something in the hand. And so, Alexander, the first thing I would ask you to do is actually, let me give you a little bit of an exercise. So if we start on like this, we can just do one hand at a time. How about? So a middle C and G, and I'm going to play with 1 and 5, and I'm going to keep everything really relaxed in here. 1 and 5. So this can really be a cushion, be nice and relaxed. There's not even a lot of structure like I talk about in some of my other. So we can play 1, and then we're going to push off with the 3 fingers in the middle. Hey Patrick, great to see you. Yes, drop a question. We're having I'm having a lot of buffering issues today, so I'm going to see how many questions I can get through, and we'll go from there. So I'm answering Alex right now, and then I'm going to hit Vito's, and then I'll get to you, Patrick. Hopefully, if the stream is, well, we'll see. If it's really annoying, just let me know, and we'll call it a day. Okay, so Alexander, thumb and 5th finger on C and G, play comfortably, and then we're going to push off with the 3 fingers in the middle, like that. And we can do this actually up a C scale, where we're just moving up every white key. So this is just a nice way to warm up for the day. And just get us feeling a little bit more natural and a little bit more relaxed. I think the side view is great for showing this movement in the wrist that's happening. Yeah. And let me show you the same thing from the top down, or mostly top down. So, Alexander, let me know if that's coming through at all. My video on my end is like a minute behind where I actually am, so I can't really tell. So, this is just a nice way maybe to start our day warming up. We can do it with both hands. And we're feeling that's a drop into the first 2, and then a spring out of the next ones. The idea behind all of this is just releasing any kind of tension that we're holding in the hands, and getting everything moving, and not focusing on playing too much with the fingers yet, right? So one thing at a time, just play, release, and we would just continue to repeat that. Okay, so I'd start with that and see if that starts to, that releasing of tension on every upstroke should start to release into your other playing. It should start to, I don't know, become a part of your other playing. And then we can also tackle something, you know, like every time we play a single note, we want to experience something similar. We're not going to rebound off the keys, but we do want to feel like after every single note that we play that we're not continuing to push. And that is usually, in my experience, what I see that causes people pain in the hands, in the top of the wrist, in the bottom of the wrist, in the palm, and up the arm, is that we're holding tightly instead, you know, because we're told to have this good curved position, so we hold on to it, and then that causes tension in itself. And then when we play, we continue to push down into the keys instead of letting things go. So Alexander, let me know if that works for you, and if you try that out, and hopefully just leave a comment and and let us know. So let me hit Vito 16. Hey, tips to match chords to melodies. Great question. So anytime, how much do you know about, and also tell me, is the stream getting any better as we go through this? I think I'm losing people because it's just very bad. So let me know. So Vito, how much do you know about scales and harmony? So every scale that we have, you know, scales match the key that we're in, okay? So if we're in C, we've got all of our white keys. That's the easiest thing to demonstrate. Okay. We can also build chords, right, on each one of those keys, each starting key. Yeah, Julio, it is it's my problem, I'm pretty sure. So let me know if it continues to be a problem or if things are starting to get better. So Vito, every scale degree, every note of the scale has a chord we can build. They get numbers too, just like the numbers of the scale degrees are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we go back to 1, okay? We can build a chord on the first scale degree, C. We can build a chord on the second scale degree. We can build one on the third, and so on and so on. All I'm doing is playing the basic triad. Triad is a chord made of 3 notes that are a third apart. That can be a little confusing if you haven't talked about that word before. Oh, great, Julio! I'm glad if it's getting better. Okay, so a triad. So let me show you a little bit. Yeah, maybe this might be easier to see. Okay, so 3 notes, a third apart. This is the great starting place for building chords, exploring melodies and chords together and how they work together. Because we have 3 pitches that go with every chord that instantly work, right? So let's say a very, very basic example. We have a piece in C major, and we've got a C chord, and an A minor chord, and an F major chord, and a G major chord. It's very, very, probably the most common progression in all of pop music history. 1 chord, 6, 4, 5, and then 1. Okay, and those are matching the scale degrees. If I play them by root, 1, 6, 4, 5, 1. Now, we know what those chords are, and we know that each chord has 3 notes that are a part of it. We can use those 3 notes, let's see. So to give you another super easy example, something that happens all the time in pop music composition is we explore common notes from chord to chord. So just take a look at this. In C, our C major chord, of course C is one of the notes in the chord. We can play a melody that's, and then we go to the 6th chord, the A minor chord. C is still a note that's in that chord. We go to the F chord. C is still a note that's in that chord. And then we change, and the last chord of our progression, G, doesn't have a C in it. So this is why so much pop music, anyway, has a lot of the same repeated pitches, because this is one of the first and easiest ways to explore pairing melody with chords. You take common notes that are common from one chord to the next chord. C is common to all three of those chords. And then we need to change when we get to the next chord that doesn't have a common tone, right? Another way that we can talk about pairing melodies and chords together is looking for ways to use passing tones to get from a chord tone to the next chord tone. So like we said, C major has 3 chord tones, C, E, and G. So we can look at creating, how can I bridge the gap in a linear way, like a scale degree at a time or one step at a time? How can I bridge the gap between tones? So let's say I'm playing in C, and I want to start this time on a G. But now I want to go up to C again, but I don't want to just jump to it. Well, I could play. So what I did was go from G and just climb up the C major scale to the next common tone. The next common tone, or the next tone, chord tone. So we said C is a part of the A minor chord, right? So we can use these non-chord tones to pass from one chord tone to the next chord tone. And then if I come and reverse that, so I'm using a combination there of chord tone, passing tone, chord tone after a leap, and back to a chord tone. So those are 2 great ways to explore what kind of melody, how to fit melody with chords. And the same, it'll work, like let's say you already have a melody composed. We'll stick with C major for a second. Okay, there's something simple that I think I can remember off the top of my head. That's close. So I can use the same kind of thing. I can experiment and say, well, what are all of the chords that match the tone I'm playing? I can use, on the first note of the melody, I can use a C chord, I could use a G chord, I could use an E minor chord. Because if we know all of the diatonic chords are the chords that match where we are and match the key we're in, the scale of the key we're in, I have a lot of choices all of a sudden. So for a G in C major, C works, G works, E minor works. Those are just our triads. And then as you go further and further in music theory and you understand 7th chords, we have a whole new set of chords that we can use. So we'll also get A7, we'll get F, we can get D11, D11. Now we have a chord that works with every single scale degree as a bass note. C, there's a G chord in inversion, A7, G chord in root position, F, or C major. Here's D11, and then back to C. Okay, and the further you go as you start to experiment outside of the key, that's going to get more and more complicated. But the same kind of principles apply. And if you look at Collier, I'm a big fan of Jacob Collier and what he does, and he talks about how every single note can be technically paired with every single chord. It's just a matter, making it sound good is a matter of how we approach it. And so the more we understand about theory, the more we find out what all of the common tones are. That's really the underlying thing here, the underlying what we're looking for as we look at melody note and chords that go with it. What are the common tones between them? And then if the melody's already written, great. We want to identify common tones and identify what's passing tone to get from chord tone to chord tone. And if we're coming from the opposite direction and we're saying that this is chords first and we're building a melody on top of it, then we can start with chords and say, oh, here's all of the melodic options in these chords, and I can build anything using those chord tones and passing tones to get where I want to go next. So I hope, Vito, let me know if you're still here, because I know the buffering has been really bad. Vito, let me know if that's helpful to you. All right. I know that there's still been a little bit where my connection's kind of dropped off in the middle of things. I've seen that happen a few times. So if you're still here and sticking around, just let me know in the chat if it's like good enough to keep going, and we'll keep going. And if it's not, we'll just come back another week. Let me see. Patrick had a question. In this exercise, are the middle fingers resting on the keys and then lifting to play them? Yes. So yes. If I go back to the very first technique I showed today, the middle fingers, the middle three fingers, are resting on the keys. And then they kind of spring, they act like a spring, to throw the hand up in the air. Throw is kind of an extreme word. They're just pushing the hand off the keys. Okay? But yeah, we start resting, and really important that the wrist stays loose. Awesome, Vito. I'm glad it was helpful. I'm glad it was helpful, and I'm glad you're still here through the internet mess. Okay, so Patrick, I hope that answers your question. Yes, the middle fingers are resting, and they're like the spring that throws the hand off the key, and we can feel it like a throw. Hey, backwards fellow. We can feel the throw, especially if we have a loose enough wrist. So Patrick's question earlier was, the first thing that comes to my mind, and actually now that a backwards fellow is here, he might actually have a great answer for you. The thing that my mind goes to, typical, well, let me ask you this. Are you talking about knowing all of the chords and progressions, or something else? Or something else? Because if you're talking, which is learning how to play the 2 chords, first in 3-finger voicings, and then in 3-note voicings, and then in 4. Whoops, there's 1, 5. Round the circle of fifths, and you go through all of the keys. You know what key you're in, and you know what the 5 chord is. Pianists have to learn very early on keys, and that's, to my mind, it's not a technical thing for mental exercise. Like playing Hanon really well is a great mental exercise. So Patrick, is that what you meant for me? Because something else, like technique-wise, there's exercises work on that. I'm not a. They really keep the hands stretched out, and they're quite difficult. Hey Vito, thanks for tuning. I'd have this book. I don't have it on my iPad. But I know that there are things in the exercise book about getting around like dominant 7 chords, but they're used in arpeggios. And you put an arpeggio and you come back down. So, yeah, let me know. I know I'm think I'm really delayed chat, what you're hearing on your end. So I'm kind of waiting for things to catch up here. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, moving from one chord to another. Oh, the technique, Patrick says. Patrick says the technique from moving from one chord to another. Okay, Patrick. You asked me this actually a couple weeks ago. And I don't think I ever got around to answering your question. Okay, so here's what I would think about. If you're playing chords, let's say that you're playing a lot of chords and they're in a root position. We'll talk about the left hand first. Again, in C major, because it's the simplest to understand quickly. So let's say we've got our C chord in root position. Pay attention to the fingers you're using, in this case 1, 3, and 5, what it feels like to play 1, 3, and 5 together. Now we know that every time we move from a root position triad to another root position triad, this is a root position triad, right? So every time we move from here to here, we are maintaining the same hand shape. So yeah, Patrick, I see that the connection is bad once again. So here's what we're going to do today. We're just going to call it a day after I finish answering this question for you. Yeah, my screen is just completely a mess. So okay, here's the answer to this question for you, and then we'll call it a day for today, and hopefully next time we all get together, it'll be a whole lot better. Okay, so root position. When we move to another position, we can keep the hand in exactly the same place. So this is from root position to root position, understanding what the shape of the chord feels like. So if we're in C major, any triad that's all white keys, could be G, C, A minor, D minor, etc., E minor, they all feel the same, okay? So first of all, understand what that feels like to play with 5, 3, 1, or 1, 3, 5 in the right hand. And we want to kind of memorize that feeling in the hand. And then what you can do is just lift your hand off of one chord, move it, aim with your outer finger, maybe your fifth finger in the left hand, because the fifth finger is going to play the root. I'm going to aim for G, and I can play a G chord. And I don't have to think about anything else because I've maintained the same hand position. Patrick says, it's just as a beginner, I'm beginning to manage arpeggios, but chords are, hard hand-wise. Okay, yeah, so this is, I think, the right direction for you to go. Understanding what they feel like and how the feel of them translates to what you're looking at on the page. Because when we have a root position triad, we have 3 notes, right? They're stacked in thirds. So if we can translate, we don't even need to always read all 3 notes. This is a little bit diving into sight reading too. But we don't need to read all 3 pitches if we can identify this is a triad all at once. And then we can read the bottom pitch. We can say, I know exactly what I'm supposed to play, and I've simplified it down to 2 things instead of 3, let's say. So I've simplified it down to the root, the lowest note, plus what the triad is. And I know if it's in root position, it's going to feel a certain way. No matter where it appears on the page, it's going to feel that particular way. Actually, a Bachwards fellow just chimed in with the next thing, the next thing that I was going to talk about. Learning cadences is a great way to start learning how to change between root position and then chord inversions, especially if you know what chords you're playing the inversions of. So maybe even before we got to playing cadences, I would take your C major chord, let's keep it in the left hand. We can play the inversion of it. An inversion means just playing the 3 pitches, but in a different order. So if I take C, and I move the bottom note to the top of the chord, now I have E, G, and C. Now it no longer looks like Well, it no longer looks like a root position triad because it isn't. It's an inversion. So this is going to look like something different on the page. It's going to feel a little different in the hand. But all of our first inversion, no matter where we play them, whether it's C, D first inversion, E first inversion, F, G, A, there's our B diminished. So we could even go up the scale in first inversion and feel what all of those feel like. We can do the same thing in second inversion. Second inversion, we again take the bottom note, move it to the top. And now we have a second inversion triad. Now it's G, C, and E. We can do the same thing. We can move them around. We can play second inversion triads up our scale. Now to get into what a backwards fellow was saying about cadences. Cadence pattern, at least the way I usually teach them, is 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. And the numbers are referring to the chords that we're playing. So a simple cadence pattern in C would be 1, 4 in an inversion, 1, 5, and 1. So now through that inversion, I'm feeling the 1 chord, C major, in root position. I'm feeling the 4 chord, the F chord, in second inversion. I go back to the 1 chord, and through that to the 5 chord in first inversion, and back to the 1 chord. So I felt all 3 types of chords: root position, first inversion, second inversion, all in one exercise. And if I also understand the chord names, especially if you understand what the Roman numerals are, 1, 4, and 5, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, that is the cadence pattern. We can translate that into any key, and this not only helps you learn the chord shapes, but it also helps you learn, so many other things. We can learn more about how to identify things on the page. We can learn about improving. We can learn about, so many things. So, especially, I like to have students learn the cadence patterns for the specific piece that we're working on at the time. So, if it's in C, we're going to learn the C major scale, a C major arpeggio, and a C cadence pattern. Both hands. Now, if you want to expand the cadence pattern, we can do a 5-7, just 3 notes. So 1, 4, 1, 5, 7, 1. Hey, Jose, you're not too late. I've had a lot of streaming problems today. 1, 4, 1, 5, 7, 1. And then we can do them in all of our keys, okay? So let's say we've got a piece in C. Great, we've got that one covered. We have a piece in G major. Let's do the same cadence pattern, but in G. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. We have a piece in, let's say, a minor key. How about A minor? 1. Did I do that right? I haven't done an A minor cadence in a long time. 4. Yep, 4, 1, 5, 1. Okay. So you could go through all of the keys that you have, pieces that you're currently working on. Those would be the great ones to tackle first. And then, Backwards Fellow says, be sure to use the correct fingering. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's also a part of the feel that I'm trying to describe too. If we use the same fingering for the right inversions repeatedly over and over again, that feel is going to get partially programmed in by the fingering that we're using. Let's leave that one there for today. Second inversion is more of a stretch, Patrick says. It's no more of a stretch than first inversion. It does feel different, though. Patrick, let me know. Hopefully, that was a whole lot of stuff. I probably wouldn't give a student all of that in one lesson. But pick and choose the bits and pieces, and you can always come back. Maybe you can come back and watch the video again if it's not too crazy jittery. Okay, so Jose is here, and so let me know. I don't know. I think things are working better because we now have 11 people here, and I kept losing people, I think, because the internet was really bad. So hopefully it's still good. Let me know if it is. I've got a green light on my end, so cross my fingers. Julio asks, any tips to play legato on scales and arpeggiated chords without the habit of gripping the keys too much? Julio, I would go very slowly to start with. So I'll just keep using C major. I mean, man, I don't like C major, but it's great for today, for everything what we're talking about. So if I'm in C, I'm playing with the right hand. Every note that I play, hey Carol, good to see you. Every note that I play, Julio, is going to be connected in legato, like we want, but I'm going to go very slowly. Patrick, sorry, Julio, let me answer Patrick's follow-up question here. How much do the fingers relax between the two grips of a cadence? Completely. In fact, every time, and this actually follows right into what I'm answering for Julio as well, every time we play a pitch, everything is relaxed. The only thing holding the key down is the weight of our arm itself. I'm not continuing to push in. I'm not bearing down, anything like that. As soon as I play the chord here, everything is relaxed. I can wiggle all my fingers, and I can move everything around. So, having we're calling them grips as far as like the chord shapes and understanding those. In an ideal world, as soon as we play, it's going to be relaxed. And then we can lift up. And the only issue with feeling the hand shape in the air is that if we really do that, we are going to hold on to tension. And I'm not a fan of that. But I do like to use this method occasionally to say, okay, here's the chord shape. I can hold it up in the air. I can know exactly what it feels like. I can move it around anywhere and play second inversion chords. So hopefully that helps answer that question. We always want to let go of the feeling of stretch or let go of the grip. But occasionally, if we're really working on something, I do it in lessons, and I usually tell students, we only work on this for a week or two because I don't want to get them in the habit of holding on to chord shapes, especially while they're not playing. So it's just the beginning step. It's the first step toward feeling this. So back to Julio's question. All right. Everything's better, it looks like. That's good. So back to Julio's question, C major scale here. Every note that I'm going to play is legato, but I'm also being sure that the entire hand and everything else is completely relaxed from pitch to pitch, and that I'm maintaining a good alignment with my arm on the pitch that I'm playing and on the finger that I'm using. So each of these, there's not a big shift, but as I play from thumb, my arm is a little bit more in and toward the body. Second finger, it moves a little bit. Third finger, it moves a little bit more. Let me see if this helps you at all. 2, 3. They're very subtle shifts, but it keeps everything in alignment and balanced. And then I can shift back to thumb. So I'm going very slowly because every time I depress a key, we are connecting with finger legato, which you already know how to do, but I'm making sure that as soon as the next key is played, everything else all my other fingers are free and the wrist is free. In another way of describing this, I'm transferring the weight that it takes to hold the C down, the first note, or this note, the current note I'm playing, I'm transferring it over to the next finger. And no more, no less. Now, in reality, if all I did was transfer weight, this is a very confusing thing. even to teach in person to people, if all I did was transfer arm weight without anything else, this is what would happen. There wouldn't be any sound. And I suppose you could practice it that way, because if I go slow enough to actually do the transfer, I'm not pressing the key fast enough to trigger the hammer to strike the string. Maybe on a digital keyboard it would be a little bit different, but it would still be an extremely soft tone, if a tone at all, right? So while it 90% feels like transferring of arm weight from one pitch to the next pitch, there's still a little bit of finger activation. And we let go of that activation as soon as the key is played. So that's a really tricky thing to implement completely on your own if you don't have somebody to give you like live feedback. But those are the best things that I can think of right now. Let me find your question again and make sure that I actually answered everything. Yeah, without the habit of gripping. Yeah, go slow and feel this transfer of weight. So this is in a scale. We can do the same thing with an arpeggio in C. Feel our alignment and our balance. And then we shift and we feel the alignment and balance. Playing arpeggios with only finger legato, slowly, sometimes we can start to form some bad habits doing that. But yeah, the same thing works. So yeah, Patrick, thanks for the question. Thanks for sticking around through all of my internet problems today. Julio, let me know. Is that helpful? Have you tried that before? Yeah, let me know any kind of reaction to that, and we can go from there. And if you have a follow-up question, we can address that as well. So, let me just jump back through here. Jose, Jose, hey, we have a question. Oh, you have a Mason and Hamlin. I love Mason and Hamlin pianos. I don't have one at home, but I've been sponsored by Mason and Hamlin for 6 years. And I used to do all of my recording on one. So I absolutely love their pianos. I don't know what the key weight is on my particular piano. So let me go back and read Jose's question. Any idea what the key touch weight is on your piano? He has a Mason and Hamlin Grand, and by his measurement it's 58 grams, which feels heavy, too heavy, and makes passage work laborious. How did you come about finding how many grams it is, your down weight? I've seen some people, I'm not a technician and I don't have all the tools. I've seen some people do it with like stacking pennies or something. I suppose I could stack some kind of coin and then measure how many coins it takes. Something like that. 58, you said 58 grams? 58 grams is actually not very heavy. That's an interesting thing. I have a couple stories to share. So I have always felt, Jose, let us know what year is your Mason and Hamlin grand piano? What year was it made in? And has it, if it was a earlier one, has it been restored? Because that can make a big difference in the reactions I'm going to share. The Mason and Hamlin that I played all the time and recorded on all the time was built in 2013, and it was after a lot of their redesigns happened, and they had a new carbon fiber action. So the entire thing, the keys were still wood. That was it. And I think there was a little bit around the hammer that had some wood in it. The entire rest of the action was all carbon fiber. Even the hammer shanks were carbon fiber. Everything was. And it made the piano be extremely precise. It had an extremely precise feel. And I always felt like it was actually too light for me. If anything, I didn't feel like it was heavy. I felt like things happened so easily that I couldn't quite control. But at the same time, I would teach lessons on that piano. And I'd have students come in after playing on a keyboard at home or on another acoustic piano at home, and they'd come in and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, this piano feels so heavy and it's so hard to do things on." And I think, so Jose says you use nickels, yeah, and you weighed them on a kitchen scale. Brand new piano, 10 years old, yeah, awesome. I love those pianos, man. So I think what we're getting at is sometimes keys can have like this point at the top of the key depression, and we have to kind of get past that point before the key really starts to fall and we start to feel like we're playing. And on different pianos, every different piano I've played has a different feel at the very top, and it doesn't exactly translate to the actual down weight of the keys. I've played some pianos that feel kind of like tight, almost tight at the top of the key, and then very quick down after that. And so I guess we kind of have to explore that too, because if there was anything from my experience playing a Mason and Hamlin, it was that the top of the key felt harder to play than the bottom of the key did. If I had to guess what the down weight of this piano is, it's probably in the 60 to 70 gram area. It's probably heavier. It feels definitely heavier than what my Mason and Hamlin was. The Mason and Hamlin that I played on wasn't the lightest piano I ever played. It wasn't like the easiest to travel. There were a couple, and it doesn't always depend on the brand either. It just depends on the piano itself and who the technician has been. And I played on a few Steinway Grands, 9-footers that were extremely quick and extremely fast. And when I was younger, I always hated that because I felt like having more pushback on the keys, more rebound, more key weight, felt like I could control it better. And as I've grown and grown as a pianist, I've wanted, most of the time, 90% of the time, I've wanted a lighter instrument. Because once my technique got kind of worked out and more perfected, I wanted to feel like I was in more control and not the piano. So I say 58 grams is kind of a light key weight because there are concert grand pianos today that can be double that. That could be 100 or 120 grams of down weight. And that can be pretty common. So as far as like tackling passages that feel laborious, it can be really tricky on a piano that already feels heavy because you're getting like this psychological input that says this is hard and it's too hard maybe, or it feels like that. The absolute best thing to do is just maybe take your dynamic down a notch or two and make sure that your technique is as relaxed as you can possibly be, as efficient as it can possibly be. Let's put it that way. Because in best case scenarios, whether you play on a piano that's 50 grams or 100 grams, hopefully we've programmed our technique to be efficient enough that we can do the same thing on every instrument that we come across, whether it's our home piano or anywhere else. And the tendency when we have a piano that feels too heavy is to actually add more tension because we're trying to control things. And so then we add more tension to be in more control. And that happens too heavy and too light in two different ways. But we add something in our body that helps us to feel like, okay, I'm pulling control away from what the piano is taking from me. But in doing so, we're making our technique less efficient. So virtuosity, this is the same kind of principle. Virtuosity is more about lightness and efficiency than speed or forte or the loudest playing you can imagine, right? So a great virtuoso pianist is going to be able to execute the same thing on a 50-gram downweight keyboard and a 100-gram downweight keyboard because they're just going to make an adjustment to what they allow the piano to do instead of the other way around. So if I come across a piano that's really heavy, hopefully I have a dress rehearsal on it or something like that, and I have to remind myself a lot, repeatedly, to not attempt to do the same kind of thing as what I might be used to. So knock a dynamic off. Maybe take 5 beats a minute off the tempo. Some things that are going to help us, prevent us from adding tension and causing more technical problems. So those are my suggestions, because you can get your piano, the key weight, reweighted. But to me, 58 grams doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like it's going to be too heavy. I think we should focus on technique and that kind of thing instead. So Julio, Jose, let me drop another another comment in the chat, and I'd love to talk about this. In fact, I would love if you submitted a video sometime for a masterclass segment, because I'd love to hear your piano. That's just my own selfish reason. But that would be a lot of fun. Julio's just said, you're right-handed and you usually have tension on the left. That's understandable, because left-hand fingers are weaker. I would just change your thinking on that a little bit. They're not weaker, they're just less coordinated. So they do need more attention, but they don't need more strength. The strength is already there. Forearm rotation, you say, improved. Yeah, there's a little bit of forearm rotation in scale practice, so great. Let me actually say something about weak fingers and strong fingers, and there's a whole lot of talk about that kind of stuff online and all kinds of various places. And you can talk to teachers and get a million different perspectives. I read a book. I've got it on my iPad. Was it called The Art of Piano Playing? The Art of Piano Technique? The Art of Piano Playing by George Kochevitsky. And in that book, he says that all piano playing, all of what it takes to play the piano, can be achieved physically by basically like a 6-year-old, which it doesn't make any of us feel any good, right? No, that doesn't mean like the mental and the neural connections and the emotional connection to make great music, but everything that's physically required. We don't need any more strength than what a 6-year-old presents, any more body development. Part of the problem is that sometimes we get older and older, and if we haven't taken lessons from an early age, or even if we have and things are changing and our technique is changing, we start to think that I need to, do X, Y, and Z to make these fingers stronger, faster, whatever. And usually what it boils down to is actually just making more efficient neural connections. So more efficient connections in our mind between what our brain is telling our hand to do and actually triggering it to happen. So we have a lot of ways, physical ways, like we talk about on this channel in these videos and in other videos. We have a lot of physical ways that encourage the brain to make those new connections. They kind of trick us, they trick the brain into doing the right thing, but the physical that we do sometimes is not, it's not actually what we're programming, right? So if anybody says, they practice 6 or 8 hours a day and it made them so strong, there's a tiny bit of that's true. And the tiny bit of that's true is probably the muscles in the upper arms and the shoulder and the back, because sitting with good posture at the piano and having our arms out actually does take strength. So across a duration like that, sure, a pianist can get stronger. But actually the act of playing a key, and if I just let me play some chords for you. If this is mezzo forte, and this is fortissimo, and this is piano or pianissimo, they all take a similar amount of strength. They're not really different. The difference is in how we trigger the mechanism to make it happen. So fortissimo My fingers aren't stronger to play that. I'm just using a different combination of things, or more of a combination of things. And if I'm playing pianissimo, the opposite, I'm going to use less of certain parts of the body and more of others. But it's not muscles. It's the body is more like levers and a bunch of connected points. It's a lot like what's inside the piano itself, actually. What makes up the whole action. We have a lot of moving parts. And the more we think about harnessing nature, harnessing what gravity does to us, and just manipulating it a tiny bit, that's going to lead to really great playing with really efficient technique. So anyway, I wasn't picking on you, Julio. I hope you know that. I just wanted to have that little discussion about weak fingers versus strong fingers because it's just so prevalent online. There's so much talk about it, and I always want to jump into things and say, like, no, we don't. The hands don't have muscles. The fingers don't have muscles. You talk to a hand. There's one gentleman who's a hand surgeon who also plays the piano, and he describes it as we basically have 5 sticks. There are 5 sticks that are connected really far away from where the fingertips are. But that's it. There isn't anything in here that's messing with it. There's just a long stick. And okay, that's a little bit oversimplified, but that is a more correct simplification than saying, like, well, I can build finger strength, for example, like by playing Hannon, which is a typical way that I hear Hannon talked about. Hannon, or playing scales really fast or loud or things like that. We don't build finger strength. We just build better coordination, better neural connection, and we learn how to utilize more of the levers and the mechanism that's in our body to actually produce faster sounds, louder sounds, softer sounds. Hey, Jose, thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it. So the standard key weight is between 48 and 52 grams. Cool. Yeah. Yep. So if the key moves slowly down, that's how we measure it. Awesome, Julio. Thanks. So here's another thing, Jose. So if I haven't gotten any other questions, I don't think. So if somebody's got a question, drop it in. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep talking about key weight. I do have another question. Hey, Dar. Hey. He says, I'm feeling guilty for learning pieces using YouTube videos. I've been really struggling with reading notes. What do you think? Should I keep trying to read music on scores? So when you say YouTube videos, you mean like the falling notes, like the synthesia, they're called synthesia style, or like rock band style stuff, right? Should you keep trying to read music on scores? Absolutely, yes. And the reason for that is I do think that there's the synthesia style stuff. It's interesting, and we can learn things from it. We can learn if it's somebody really good playing, and that's questionable when you start looking at people that are doing that kind of stuff. If it's somebody really good playing, we can learn about finger legato. We can learn a lot about finger legato and things like that. But what we can't really learn about is dynamics or markings on the score, or slurs, expressive markings. Those never appear in the drop down notes. Sometimes you'll see like pedaling show up, but pedaling on a digital keyboard is usually on and off, and on an acoustic instrument it's never just on or off. It's always somewhere in the middle usually. Or it could be 100% on, and then it could be 90% on, and then it could be 80% on, and then we lift and it's only 10% on. And none of that we don't see any of that in the drop-down notes. So, yes. I know that, reading notes, it's like learning another language. So, think about it this way. Maybe for some people, it's if you've only learned one language, let us know, Haydar, are you multilingual? I spent a little while learning Spanish a long time ago. I'm horrible. I remember almost nothing because I didn't keep practicing. I didn't keep it up. But learning music notation is like learning another language. And what I equate it to is when you see a word, just a normal word, typed, printed on a page, written down, we think about, if we're fluent in the language, we don't see the individual letters. Oh, see, brilliant. Arabic and English. So you are probably more, I can't think of the word, but reading music notation is probably going to come a little bit easier to you than it will to somebody who only speaks one language. So when we're fluent in a language, we don't see the individual letters, right? We see everything that makes up a word, and sometimes more than that. So if we talk about when we first start reading, we see a letter, and we learn what all the letters are, and then we see them in groups, and we can learn maybe short words, or we learn, prefixes and suffixes and etc. So then we start putting them in small groups, and then we learn words, and then the words have meaning that go with the words that we learn, and then we combine words into phrases, right? So if I equate that to music, when we have to look at it, if we're looking at a musical score and we're saying, this one is an E, and that one's a G, and this one is a C, and then the left hand's got these notes, we're reading letter by letter. We're at the most basic level, right? And we need to build in ways that we can start to see the whole word at one time. So if it's C, E, and G, we can spend some time saying, okay, well, that is actually a C triad in first inversion. This goes back to something we were talking about earlier. It's in first inversion. And now, if I can read the shape on the page, just like we read words, the words are a combination of letters, but we don't read every letter. We just know what the word is. And we want to do the same thing with music notation. So we see the whole shape all at one time, whether it's 3 notes, 4 notes, sometimes more notes, whatever it happens to be. And instead of, think about it like boiling down or condensing the number of things that we have to think about to the minimum number, right? So if instead of reading 3 notes or 4 notes, we're reading one shape. That's if the chords are blocked, meaning everything happens all at one time. And let's say the chords aren't blocked and they happen over time. If I do the same thing, well, in my mind, those are the same things. Whether it's blocked or arpeggiated, it's a C major chord. I think about only one thing. So when they're already stacked on music for us, that's a great way to practice this kind of reading. Try to read the bottom note or the top note, pick one pitch, and read just that one, and then try to read what the shape is, instead of reading what all the individual notes are. And then you can check yourself by reading all the individual pitches and say, you got it right, hopefully, right? And then the harder part is when things are expanded horizontally over time, we want to do the same thing. We want to take what might be printed on the score from left to right over the course of 1 bar or 2 bars. And again, let's just say it's a C, it's basically a C major chord. So I've just made up an arpeggio. But if I saw that on a piece of music, I would see all of that over the course of 2 bars, and I'd condense it and imagine everything stacked up and what chord it is. And then I know what the shape is that I'm trying to play. And that's kind of an advanced example. If it was something more simple, just like a triad that's repeating, that's a little bit closer to the first thing I mentioned. So we take the 3 notes that are separated, imagine stacking them on top of each other, find out what the chord is when we block it, and then we know the whole thing. And then the better you get at this, the more you're going to see entire phrases of music are going to look more like entire phrases of words, where you can quickly read a phrase of words on a page, and you know what all the words are, and you know what the meaning is, and we can easily pronounce all of it, right? And in music, we have the same. We can do the same kind of thing. We see all of the relationships, and we don't really like it. You talk to most pianists that are advanced, they're not going to say, we don't read notes. We read shapes off the page, and we read statements and phrases. And occasionally, if something is really strange looking, we might have to read some notes. But that's like 1% of the time. The whole rest of the time, we're reading the bigger picture. So it's just like taking language and becoming fluent in a spoken and written language. Very similar thing to music. So yeah, Haydar, you said you learned to play Moonlight Sonata first movement up to half of the piece, and the score looked complicated. Yeah, but see, maybe what you would do when you were using the Synthesia, hey, I'm alive. When you were using Synthesia, you may have been using a little bit more of your ears too. And we want to make sure that even when we're looking at paper or our score, whatever, whether it's on paper or on our iPad or whatever, that we're still using our ears. And so there is a similarity in like quick Synthesia reading and quick score reading, in that we can read shapes and we can see the distance between things, right? I kind of come from the opposite perspective, Haydar, in that I see Synthesia videos and I cannot imagine trying to learn music from them, because on the page, yeah, you're welcome, Haydar. On the page, music is usually laid out in a way where the most important notes are going to kind of be highlighted by the staff, right? The treble clef, the bass clef, and where we're at. Whereas you look at a Synthesia, a graphic representation, and all we have are like 88 spots that fall down. And I look at that and I see 88 spots, and I would have to play the video so extremely slowly to learn all of it, because the relationships, I don't see, there isn't a great representation of like how far away is a third or a fifth or a minor third or a major sixth. Things that I can see instantly on a piece of music, I would have to, it would be like if I was learning how to read music all over again. I would have to slow it down and look at one note and then go to the next, 0.2 of a second later and look at the next note. And then I would have to try to memorize what's happening. So I would actually love to talk to somebody that, like you, Haydar, I would love to get more information about what it feels like and what the learning process has been like, because I'd love to know the difference, because I have no perception of really trying, like being successful learning music using one of those methods. But I know a lot of people do. So anyway, very long explanation. And yeah, I would definitely keep reading music off of a score. You'll get to a certain point, it'll be far faster than reading it from dropping notes, and you'll have the added bonus of, depending on, it sounds like you like classical music, so especially if you like classical music and not just pop music, there's going to be all kinds of things written in the score that the composers put down that are important for interpretation and musicality that we don't get represented at all in the falling notes. So let me go back a little bit. So Jose, earlier you said heavier action does make using isolated fingers impossible. Heavier makes using isolated fingers impossible. I guess forearm really has to be behind each finger. In that sense, it's a really good thing then, because then you're really training your technique to be just exactly spot on, or you can't get away with anything. Sometimes lighter piano actions can feel like semi-weighted keyboards or non-weighted keyboards, and I've had some in-person students that have started on one of those because they're usually far less expensive And they have a significant trouble transitioning from the no weight or almost no weight on the keys, even to something very light that's maybe only 40 grams, 30 grams. And then if you bring them to a typical piano, like we said, is between 40 and 52 or something even heavier, they haven't built any of the coordination that it takes to actually activate the keys. So in a sense, it's kind of a blessing to have that heavier action, as long as it doesn't create tension in us and prevent us from forming that great technique. Let's see, Julio says, teachers say that the faster you press the keys, the louder it gets, and the slower you press, the quieter. Is the explanation about loud and soft playing really that simple? No. There's a little bit of, I'll describe it as a little bit of physics and a little bit of magic, because yes, physics-wise, the more velocity, the faster the velocity you depress the key, the faster the hammer strikes the string. And that is exactly what like digital pianos emulate, and all of the sample libraries that you can buy online for your digital pianos, that's what they emulate. The faster the key goes down, the higher the velocity, the louder the tone is. And so that part of it's true. The part that's not true, that I have never met anyone that can really explain it, I don't know if I can really explain it, is that you can press a key or play a chord in the same dynamic, but with multiple different colors. And the colors start to mimic different dynamics. So if we have a warm color, it's going to sound different. It's going to almost sound softer. So let's say we have a warm color. I'm not going to play it that soft. If we have a warm color, and then let's see if I can do it. If we have a brighter color, I don't know if that difference is, it's very subtle. I'm not quite getting all the keys activated right. But depending on how we use the keyboard, we can get those color shifts. And ironically, changing color involves changing the speed of the hammer. So what I was taught was that if we slow the hammer down, the hammer speed, striking the string, we get a warmer tone. If we speed the hammer up, we get a brighter tone. And some ways of doing that are, you know, if we want a brighter tone, we can play more with the tips of the fingers. If we want a warmer tone, we can play more with the pads of the fingers. If we want a brighter tone, we can activate the key more straight down vertically. If we want a warmer tone, we can activate it more diagonally, even toward us or toward the fall board. An infinite combination between those. Now, how that works physically, I think actually has, it still has an explanation in physics. Yes, I guess a Bachward's fellow that says the mix of color is created by the relative proportion of overtones. Yes, that's true. But how does it physically happen? And I think the answer to that is that whether the hammer is still accelerating as it strikes or whether it's decelerating as it strikes, which is a really complex thing to wrap our brain around. And that's something that digital pianos do not emulate, because we only have velocity on digital instruments, which is how fast the key goes down. So if we add to that this other component, well, we have a certain velocity, but if the velocity is slowing as the hammer goes up, we're going to get a warmer tone. If the velocity is speeding as the hammer goes up, we're going to get a brighter tone. So that is how we can have the same velocity, however we want to define that, whether it's in MIDI velocity or just what it feels like. We can have the same velocity but have different types of colors come out. The Bachward's fellow says the explanation in physics needs to include the human oral perception, how the ears and mind assemble all of the overtones. Yeah, I guess, well, I mean, I assume and I guess this is wrong. I always assume people know what warm and bright colors are in music, and maybe maybe that needs a little bit more explanation. So let me see. Where was that question? That was from Julio. That's a great question. So that is one of the reasons why I really dislike playing at least complex music on a digital keyboard. I've done a little bit of it, but it's just not possible to do so many things that I want and that my ear is attuned to. It's not possible to do it because I can't control the acceleration or deceleration of the hammer. I only get one result. So let me continue through here. Yeah, Bachward's Fellow, yeah, you were commenting on some of Jose's questions. Oh, a Bachward's Fellow. I actually wanted to tell you this. We're going to wrap up pretty soon here because I've been on an hour and 20. I'm glad that so many of you stuck around. Thanks for going through the mess of internet problems I had earlier, and thanks for sticking around if you have. A Bachward's Fellow, what he's telling Jose about, playing but letting fingers rest on the keys and only activating one. I wanted to tell you, a Bachward's Fellow, that I have, for the actually first time in my life, I used that with a student of mine recently. I've never taught that way before, and I had a moment where it was perfect. It was the perfect thing to tackle a problem. So yeah, that's a great tip there. Oh, so Hadar asks, can you name 5 classical pieces for me to learn reading? It doesn't have to be in C major. Awesome. Where would you say your technique is? How many keys do you know? How many scales do you know? Yeah. Give me a little bit of an idea, and I think I can narrow some things down for you. Off the top of my head, gosh. If you're playing the first movement of Moonlight Sonata, we should probably... I would look at a Clementi Sonatina, if that's not too complicated, something like that. Most major scales in C sharp minor. Ooh, lovely key. So you could start. I'd have to do a little bit more looking, but Clementi sonatinas, there are a ton of them. We don't want to pick anything that's too crazy. A Bachward's Fellow, do you have a suggestion off the top of your head for which opus and number? I would have to look that up on some of my tables of stuff. But I would go there, and maybe a Satie piece. We talked about some Satie on our last live stream, and Satie can be great. It's not too complicated. It explores a little bit further, on the keyboard. So the notational reading is going to be a little bit more challenging, but the technique required is going to be more simple. Clementi, probably some Bach. Yeah, Bachward's Fellow says pick by how complicated it looks. We could do like some Bach minuets. Perhaps a couple of the easier Chopin preludes. So at least we're kind of going through some of the time periods. There's also if you don't mind playing from books that say, they're for young people, like albums for the young and things like that, there are a lot of great pieces to work on. Let me find some of the composer names because I can't think of them off the top of my head. Let's see here. So for something more contemporary, there are some things by Bela Bartok, that are really good. I want to say Glinka, but maybe I'm wrong. Oh, Kevin Olson. Kevin Olson is a contemporary composer, and he's got some really interesting things. Shostakovich has some great stuff. That's on the. It's not beginner by any means. It's just on the maybe late beginner side of things, early intermediate side of things. So Haydar says, I tried Chopin's Prelude in E, but also using YouTube. Yeah. You know what would be actually a great practice is taking what you've learned on YouTube, because you already have some muscle memory built, and then comparing that to what the score looks like. So you can immediately start to recognize what something feels like and associate it with what it looks like in a different format. So I would totally do that. So, yeah, Patrick's comment earlier, Haydar, to read separately, even just 4 bars of new material every day. There are books and books of like sight reading practice you could get. That's a great thing. That isn't so overwhelming as an entire piece of music, but just take 4 bars, 8 bars, and practice reading it. And there'll be stuff, if it's from a sight reading book in particular, it'll be stuff that is far below your like technical level. So it'll be that much easier to accomplish. Cool. Yeah, Cyrus and Aurelius. Hey, good to see you. Bartok pieces for children. Yeah, they are good. They're good. Awesome. Okay, everybody. I'm going to pop off for today. Thanks for tuning in. I am so sorry if you were here at the beginning. We had like 30 minutes of really, really bad internet connection. That it got better over the course of the stream, but I don't know how usable the first bit of today's Q&A is going to be if you want to go back and check out what we talked about. Anyway, I appreciate all of you being here. We're going to do the same kind of thing in 2 more weeks. We didn't have any submissions to like the masterclass segment that I did 2 weeks ago. So if you'd like to film a video of yourself playing and get some commentary on it, and if you don't mind yourself being put live on YouTube for everybody to see, send it over. There's a link in the description, or my email address in the description, and a little bit of directions on how to go about doing that. And I would absolutely love to hear from you and to see some of you playing and hear you playing. That would be really, really awesome. And if we get enough of those, I'll just dedicate an entire segment to that kind of thing, so we can keep the Q&A separate and make sure I get to everybody's questions, and we can do the master classes at another time. So anyway, thank you so much again. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day today, or rest of your night, especially Cyrus and Aurelius. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing hopefully all of you again 2 weeks, just about the same time as we are now, 2 weeks from now. It'll be September. Oh my gosh. How crazy is that? Okay. Well, anyway, like I said, see you next time. Remember, practice smarter, not harder. And yeah, until we meet again.